look at 2020, Nevada, as I said on stage, in many ways is a model for the nation. This is a state that is growing, it's diverse, it represents in many ways the future of this country. At the same time, in 2018, they cemented here a Democratic majority, the first majority female legislature in the history of the United States, a Democratic governor, and because of that, they've passed legislation that benefits working families, improves educational opportunity here in the state, and lifts up the quality of life for Nevadans throughout this entire state. So I'm glad to be here, and there's plenty of work for reporters to do to look at the track record the Democrats can create when they have the ability to govern like they do here in Nevada. And a lot of it is, I think, a good example of what's possible in our country going forward. I believe that on January 20th, 2021, we are going to have a Democratic president, a Democratic Senate, and a Democratic House. And we're going to need to take a page from Nevada's book and get some real work done on behalf of the American people. With that, I'll take questions.
2 weeks ago, you participated in the Liberty and Justice dinner in Iowa, and in order to participate in that dinner, you had to sign a pledge that you would maintain Iowa's status as the first in the nation caucus if you were to become the nominee. And then last week, you called for the reordering of these early contests. Can you explain why you signed that pledge 2 weeks ago, only to reverse it?
I pledged to, my understanding is I pledged to participate with Iowa being the first caucus in this 2020 process. I certainly did not pledge, do not pledge under any kind of loyalty oath to forevermore say that Iowa or any state is going to go first. You know, it surprises me if what Iowa wants is some sort of pledge in blood, some loyalty oath from people that forevermore you're going to be first. You know, that has no bearing whatsoever. And you know, as so many people have recognized, even people in Iowa, go read the Cedar Rapids Gazette that wrote an editorial. I mean, these are folks in Iowa. So many people in Iowa and New Hampshire have come out over the last week and said, you're right. Yeah, we love the access that we have to candidates in these states, but you're right. As Democrats, we recognize that our states don't reflect the diversity of our party or of our country. And the people in Iowa and New Hampshire, a lot of them have said, you're right. You know, we can't go on saying that we have to make sure there's great representation in our party and in Democratic administrations and that everybody can get to the voting booth and participate, and at the same time start our presidential nominating process in a way that completely diminishes the vote of African Americans, of people of color, of people with disabilities, of working people, because the Iowa caucus happens one time with no early voting, no absentee voting. Think about that. The disability community in Iowa has complained for a long time about those caucuses, and they're not really doing much to change that. So nothing against Iowa, nothing against New Hampshire. The people have been wonderful. I've said that many times. I believe they can still play an important role in the process, but I also believe that it's time to give other states a chance to go first. I was happy to see that Majority Leader Reid agrees with me. Many people in Iowa and New Hampshire agree with me, and I believe that ultimately it will change because, look, people recognize that it has to change. And if there's something that we've been better about than Republicans, it's that we have recognized that we have to change as our nation changes.
Secretary Castro.
Should states get rid of the caucus systems and move into primaries instead?
Well, look, I think that states need to make their process as open as they possibly can for people to participate. Maybe there are some caucuses that have a better track record. I know in Iowa, the participation rate, the turnout rate, something like 16% last time. That's very low. What you want to do is you want to have a process in place that opens that up, that gets as much participation as possible. Usually that's more likely a primary, but if a state could do that in a caucus, you know, let's see. What I want is a system where as many people participate as possible. That's what we've been pushing back against Republicans on as they've tried to suppress the vote in so many ways, with voter ID, with this gerrymandering, with dumping people off the rolls in states like Georgia that cost Stacey Abrams the gubernatorial election. So we need to be more thoughtful about how we conduct our elections. Yes, we need to push back against Republicans because they're doing some nefarious things that are suppressing the votes of people of color and others, but we also need to live by our values.
Secretary Castro, can we get your reaction to Mayor Bloomberg apologizing for supporting stop and frisk policies in New York City?
I don't believe in stop and frisk. I believe that what it turned into was especially a way for too many police officers to harass poor people and African Americans and other people of color in New York. Yeah. It's interesting timing that the mayor would apologize for that now, but that was a wrong policy. I guess it's better late than never, and people will have to judge whether they believe his apology.
Secretary Castro,
can you talk about what issues you think would be more on the national scene if Nevada or another state was first instead of Iowa and New Hampshire?
Sure. I think there are a number of different issues. I'll give you an example. I've gotten asked more about ethanol than I have about any kind of transportation in Iowa. Even though millions and millions of people in this country rely on that kind of infrastructure of mass transit, whether we're talking about buses or rail or anything like that. In part because neither one of those states has any kind of very populated urban community. Another, of course, is immigration. Here in Nevada, the issue of immigration has been a front burner issue. In fact, a lot of the push for DACA and DAPA came out of Nevada in the 2012-2014 timeframe, and that continues today. Another issue, I believe, is this improvement of job opportunities in a diversified economy, because you have states that have more diversified economies than those two states. And so it's different industries that will be asking their questions about what you're going to do to make sure that different types of opportunities are available. What happens when you have two states that constantly go first over and over and over again is that you have entrenched corporate interests that get to push their own agenda in Congress, in front of the presidential candidates, and if you mix the states up and allow them to rotate, that doesn't happen. Those entrenched interests don't get the same leverage over time.
Secretary Castro, you were one of the first presidential candidates to come out against the Las Vegas City Council's ordinance that would fine and arrest homelessness. In a recent interview we did with Mayor Carolyn Goodman, she said no presidential candidates had called her regarding that. Could you confirm or deny that? And then following up on that, if elected president, what would you do for the affordable housing crisis in states like Nevada?
I have tremendous respect for Mayor Goodman. Had the opportunity to work with her when I was housing secretary. I'm a fan of some of the work that they have done here in Las Vegas, including to try and reduce veteran homelessness over the years. At the same time, I don't believe that people should criminalize desperation and poverty. And that's why I spoke up against the ordinance that the Las Vegas City Council was considering. That's what I believe, and I'm going to speak to that. I put out a whole housing plan on how we can ensure that everybody has a safe, decent, affordable place to live in this country, and it includes investments in the National Housing Trust Fund, in the low-income housing tax credit, community development block grants, home funding on the supply side of housing. On the demand side of housing, it includes a refundable renter's tax credit for the first time ever, as well as making the Housing Choice Voucher Program an entitlement program, so that anybody that earns less than 50% of the area median income could get a Housing Choice Voucher, so they can go into the private housing market and find a place to live.
Secretary, your home state of Texas, pundits have been talking about that state turning blue for a long time. Are there any lessons you can take from Nevada or elsewhere to make that happen?
Sure. I mean, this is a good example of that it requires strong leadership. Harry Reid, over the years, has been a very strong Democratic leader, not only nationally, but especially here in Nevada, helping to recruit candidates, helping to support those candidates in every way that he could, helping to fundraise for those candidates. In addition to that, what you saw over the last 20 years in especially the Clark County area was the diversification of Nevada. I mean, look at the Asian American community. And if journalists want to do a story, which is hardly ever written, is the story of the growth of the Asian American community and its political influence in Clark County and throughout this state. underwritten about, underattended to, but very real and growing, and I believe symbolic or emblematic of the kinds of changes that are happening in the suburbs of the DFW area and of Houston and other places that are helping to turn Texas blue like it turned Nevada blue.
Got time for one more?
Secretary, you were the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, and as a kid, I wanted to ask, what would you say to kids who go back to homes that really shouldn't be lived in, that are inhumane? What is your plan to have houses renewed and people can go have a comfortable living at their home?
My hope for every child in our country is that they're able to live in a safe and decent place, in a nice home. And that's why I put forward a plan so that everybody can have a safe, decent, affordable place to live. But also, one of the things that I learned in the Obama administration, especially, was that people don't live in silos. And our kids not only need us to provide more housing opportunity, it's also about connecting those dots, so better educational opportunities so that they can reach their dreams, better job opportunities when people get out of high school or out of college. What we want to do is we want to create the ability of every single child to find success and invest in their family so that they can do that. And I feel very, very blessed that I had the chance to go to our public schools and to have a very loving family that helped shepherd me to reach my American dream. I want to support those families that are trying to do that for kids around the United States.
Thanks, John.
All right. Thanks a lot, y'all.
Thank you.